Alain Fabien Maurice Marcel Delon, November 8, 1935 to 18 August 2024, was a French actor. Acknowledged as a cultural and cinematic leading man of the 20th century, Delon emerged as one of the foremost European actors of the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s, and became an international sex symbol. His style, looks, and roles made him an icon of cinema worldwide and earned him enduring popularity. Delon achieved critical acclaim for his roles in films such as Women Are Weak, 1959, Purple Noon, 1960, Rocco and His Brothers, 1960, Leclise, 1962, The Leopard, 1963, Le Samurai, 1967, The Girl on a Motorcycle, 1968, La Piscine, 1969, Le Cercle Rouge, 1970, Un Flic, 1972, and Monsieur Klein, 1976. Over the course of his career, Delon worked with many directors, including Luchino Visconti, Jean-Luc Godard, Jean-Pierre Melville, Michelangelo Antonioni, and Louis Malle. Delon received many film and entertainment awards throughout his career. In 1985, he won the César Award for Best Actor for his performance in Notre Histoire, 1984. In 1991, he became a member of France's Legion of Honor. At the 45th Berlin International Film Festival, he won the honorary Golden Bear. At the 2019 Cannes Film Festival, he received the honorary Palme d'Or. In addition to his acting career, Delon also recorded the spoken part in the popular 1973 song Paroles, a duet with Dalida as the main singing voice. He acquired Swiss citizenship in 1999. Family. The Delons are originally from Saint Vincent-Lespinasse, in Tarn-et-Garonne. Their known genealogy goes back to Jean Delon, born in the 15th century. Delon's paternal great-grandfather, Fabien Delon, Saint Vincent-Lespinasse, December 28, 1829 Figeac, Lot, December 12, 1909, a civil engineer, was decorated with the Legion of Honor in 1892. His paternal grandmother, Marie-Antoinette Evangelista, born in 1867 in Prunelli di Fiumorbo, was Corsican. On December 3, 1888 she married Delon's paternal grandfather, G. Marcel Delon, Figeac, November 4, 1856, 1926, then a tax collector in Gap, who was appointed in Corsica in 1886. The couple had 2 children together, a son François Fabien Delon and a daughter Jean Lucidora Adèle Delon. Delon's maternal grandfather, Alfred Louis Arnold, 1876 to 1959, was born in Paris and was a rider of the French army, gendarme. His parents were just Arnold, born in 1847 in Biglen, Uri, a shoemaker by trade, and Marie-Adèle Lienemann, born in 1849, a cook. He married Maria Menard, 1881 to 1913, a model for Jean Lanvin. The couple had 2 children, a daughter, Edith Marie Suzanne Arnold, and a son, Henri Arnold. Personal life. On March 20, 1959, Delon was engaged to actress Romy Schneider, whom he met when they co-starred in the film Christine, 1958. After their first film together, the couple of Alain Delon and Romy Schneider became iconic. Schneider, already a highly acclaimed star, and Delon, a rising talent, were affectionately nicknamed Les Amants Magnifiques, the Magnificent Lovers, Les Fiancés Eternels, Eternal Fiancés, and Les Amants Terribles, the Terrible Lovers, due to their passionate and tumultuous relationship, which was the subject of intense media scrutiny, with paparazzi relentlessly pursuing them. Schneider's family remained opposed to their union, adding further complexities to their romance. In 1964, Delon and Schneider broke up. Their love story continued to captivate audiences and cemented their status as one of the most beautiful couples in cinema history. In 2009, Delon admitted his regret for not marrying Schneider, and in 2018, he referred to her as the love of his life. In 1961, he had an affair with German actress, singer, and model Nico. And in 1962, Nico gave birth to a son, Christian Aaron Ballone, Ari Pavchin, Ari, but Delon never recognized the child as his. Ari was raised mostly by Delon's parents. In 2001 and 2019, Ballone attempted to sue Delon for legal recognition of paternity, but without success. In 1963, Delon met young divorcee Francine Canovas, a model known professionally as Natalie Barthélemy. He was also involved in an affair with Marissa Mel both before and after publicly announcing his engagement to Natalie Barthelemy during a press conference. This liaison continued even after his marriage in 1964 and persisted into 1965. On August 13, 1964, he married Natalie Barthelemy due to her pregnancy, which became publicly known, and thereafter she took the name Natalie Delon. Their son Anthony Delon, her second child, was born on September 30, 1964. Natalie later revealed that Delon's love for Romy Schneider remained a constant presence in their relationship, with Alain often displaying a deep sadness indicative that his heart still belonged to Romy. In 1964 to 1965, Delon's relationships also included Anne-Margaret and Lana Wood. In 1967, Alain Delon filed for divorce. The couple divorced on February 14, 1969. In the mid-1960s, Delon had a short relationship with Dalida. The two had been friends since first meeting in Paris in 1955, where they were neighbors in the same building on the Champs-Élysées. In August 1968, during the shooting of the film La Piscine, Delon met French actress Mireille d'Arc and asked her to appear with him in a movie. They started a relationship that lasted until 1982. He later had short relationships with actresses Anne Parelot and Lana Wood, as well as Catherine Blaney, ex-wife of Didier Pironi. Delon was in a short relationship with Guadeloupe-born dancer and actress Madeleine Bamy. He met Bamy on the set of La Piscine, in which Bamy had a small role. As Delon was also Mireille d'Arc's partner at the time, he shared his life with two women. Bamy ended their relationship in 1971 and subsequently became Jacques Brel's last companion. Their love triangle served as an inspiration to the 1969 film The Love Mates, in which Delon and d'Arc starred. d'Arc wrote the film's screenplay under her real name, Mireille Agras. In 1987, Delon met Dutch model Rosalie van Bremen, NL, on the set of the music video for his song Como Cinema and started a relationship. They had two children, Anouchka Delon, November 25, 1990, and Alain Fabien Delon, March 18, 1994. The relationship ended in 2001. Early life. Childhood and education, 1935 to 1952. Alain Fabien Maurice Marcel Delon was born at 99, Houdan Street on November 8, 1935 in Sauze, a wealthy suburb of Paris in the department of Seine, now Hauts-de-Seine. Son of François Fabien Delon, Crepon-sur-Arzon, March 12, 1904, 1977, a projectionist and later the director of the Cinema Le Regina in Bourg-Lorraine, and Edith Marie Suzanne Arnold, 1911 to 1995, an assistant employed in a pharmacy and a theater usher at the cinema. He was born into a petit bourgeois family. In 1939, Delon was 4 years old when his parents divorced. Both of his parents remarried. As a result, he had two half-brothers and an adopted sister on his father's side, and two half-siblings on his mother's side. He was then entrusted to a foster family, which would remain for him a childhood wound that never healed. The father of this family was a prison guard in Fraynes Prison, Val-de-Marne. Delon, who lived next door, heard the salvo that executed the wartime collaborator Pierre Laval in the prison courtyard in 1945, the details of which he was told. While living with the foster family, Delon became passionate about bicycle racing and had hoped to become a bicycle racer like Fausto Coppi. The foster parents later died, and Delon was sent back to his family, and his parents took shared custody of him. Growing up, he would spend time living with his father and his second family in Les Les Roses and his mother and her second family in Bourg-Lorraine. His parents then placed him in the Catholic boarding school of Saint Nicolas d'Igny, Essonne, where he spent all his youth with one of his best friends, Gérard Salome. While staying at St. Nicholas, his passion for music developed and he joined the school choir, and was also chosen to sing as a soloist. He was also congratulated by Cardinal Roncalli, who later went on to become Pope John XXII. However, due to the lack of attention his parents were giving him, Delon became unruly, constantly misbehaving in the classroom and getting into fights with other children. He was later expelled from the school because of his bad behavior. The priests then recommended that he be sent to Saint Gabriel de Bagnols. During his 4 years there, Delon would constantly misbehave and would be disrespectful to his teachers. He then stole the director's motorcycle, which resulted in him getting expelled again. Delon was expelled from a few more schools until the age of 13, when he entered St. Nicolas d'Igny Institute. While in school, he had the opportunity to perform the role of a thug in Le Rapt, a 22-second silent short film directed by Olivier Bourguignon, a friend of his father. At age 14, Delon decided he did not want to stay in the school and wished to leave France. He decided to run away to Chicago with his friend Daniel Salwadet, who had an uncle living there. They left the school, determined to hitchhike to Bordeaux. When the pair arrived in Châtellerault, a passerby took them to the local police station. Due to Delon's temper, he and his friend were put in jail and were sent back to their families. Because of his actions, Delon was expelled from the school. His parents then decided that studies were not for him and made Delon abandon them. His mother, who had married Paul Boulogne, a butcher and delicatessen owner from Bourg-Lorraine, took him into the family home. However, Delon stated later that he never really found a place in that family and never felt safe there. Delon passed a CAP examination in charcuterie at the Au Jambon de Paris. For 3 years, he worked at his stepfather's delicatessen, which had 16 employees. But during those 3 years, Delon developed a very bad reputation in the community. He partied constantly and got into bar fights, and was also a member of a gang at one point. Military service and Indochina War, 1952 to 1956. Anticipating the call-up for military service, he joined the French Navy at age 17. After a stint at the Pont-Rhin Maritime Training Center, he continued his service in 1953 at the Bourmet Signals School. After he was caught stealing equipment, the Navy gave him a choice of leaving it or extending his commitment from 3 to 5 years. During the French Indochina War, he fought in the Battle of Dien Bien Phu in 1954. As a first-class seaman, he was then assigned to the protection company of the Saigon Arsenal, in what was still French Indochina. Towards the end of the war, he was arrested for stealing a jeep and going on a trip during which the vehicle fell into a stream. His radio license was revoked and he was expelled from the Navy. He celebrated his 20th birthday in a prison cell. This period made a deep impression on him. He discovered military discipline, a sense of honor and respect for the values represented by the flag of France. He developed a passion for weapons and was captivated by the performance of French actor Jean Gabin in Touché pas au Grisby, a film he saw in the Indochinese capital. After his naval service, Delon returned to France in 1956. He resented his parents for letting him go to Indochina. He was a volunteer, but their permission was necessary, and did not get back in touch with them, deciding to fend for himself and having no idea what he would do for a living. His younger brother Jean-François Delon would later be the first in his family to reconnect with him in 1961 after seeing Alain's face on a Rocco and his brother's poster. Delon settled in at the Regina Hotel and did a few odd jobs, notably as a longshoreman at Les Halles and as a waiter in a café near the Champs-Élysées. He met the future singer Dalida, with whom he would have an affair later in life. In Pigalle and Montmartre, he met members of the French underworld, thugs and gigolos, one of whom, a homosexual named Carlos, ensured his protection. Delon was fascinated by the values of this environment, in particular the sense of honor, friendship, respect, and the law of silence. His slim physique and his pleasant angelic face attracted women and allowed him to be housed and fed by several prostitutes, which was not to his displeasure. His future then seemed to be heading towards a career as a pimp. Acting career. Early career, 1957 to 1958. Delon discovered the bustling Saint-Germain-des-Prés district and at the Club Saint-Germain met the actress Brigitte Aubert, who had recently acted for the director Alfred Hitchcock in To Catch a Thief. They lived together on Rue du Pré-aux in the 7th arrondissement of Paris, which distanced Alain Delon from the underworld and changed his career path. On the occasion of the 1957 Cannes Film Festival, he went down with her to the Côte d'Azur and moved into the house she owned in Saint-Paul-de-Vence. It was during this festival that he became friends with Jean-Claude Brialy and came into contact with the film industry, where he met his future agent George Boehm. He was spotted by Henry Wilson, who was in charge of recruiting new talent on behalf of the American film producer David O. Selznick, who offered him a trial run in Rome. He thus entered the world of cinema without any particular training as an actor. In Rome, Italy, he lived with Gian Paolo Barbieri, who would become a famous photographer in the Cinecittà Studios. On the sidelines of the filming of Charles Vidor's A Farewell to Arms, he underwent conclusive auditions and Selznick offered him a 7-year contract in the United States on the condition that he learn English. Delon returned to Paris and began to study English, but the actress Michel Corduit, whose lover he had become, convinced her husband, the director Yves Allégret, to hire him to shoot his first film, Quand la femme s'en mêle. He played a small role alongside the star Edwige Feuillère. Alain Delon recounted, "I didn't know how to do anything. Allégret looked at me like that and he said, 'Listen to me, Alain. Speak as you speak to me. Look at how you look at me. Listen as you listen to me. Don't play live.' It changed everything. If Yves Allégret hadn't told me that, I wouldn't have had this career." He then appeared in the comedy Sois belle et tais toi by Marc Allégret, Yves' brother, where he associated with Mylène de Mongiat and Henri Vidal, as well as another young actor, a beginning actor like himself, Jean-Paul Belmondo. During the shooting, he borrowed the Renault 4 CV belonging to Pascal Jardin, the director's second assistant, against Jardin's advice. In the St. Cloud Tunnel, the borrowed car rolled over 5 times, the vehicle was destroyed and Delon escaped, suffering only a minor injury that left a scar under his chin which became characteristic of his image. In 1958, then a young leading man, he was chosen by the actress Romy Schneider, who had become a world celebrity following the success of the Sissi film trilogy, to play her male partner in Christine by Pierre Gaspard Huet. The producers arranged an interview with the press at Orly Airport in Paris. The two young actors met for the first time when Romy got off the plane on April 10, 1958. Their first relationship was stormy. Romy didn't speak French, Alain Delon didn't speak German, and while she found him uninteresting and in bad taste, he found her unattractive. Filming began 2 months later, and the two actors did not get along at all. However, they ended up falling in love, and the Fiancés of Europe celebrated their official engagement, organized by Romy's mother and stepfather in Morcote, Switzerland, on the shores of Lake Lugano, in front of the international press, without planning a date for a possible wedding. They embodied beauty, youth, success, and became a couple celebrated by show business and the public. After Christine, where he played his first important role, Delon had his first success in Michel Boisron's Weak Women, where he reunited with Mylène de Mongiat and also shared the bill with other young leads, Pascal Petit and Jacqueline Sassard. In Le Chemin de Écoliers, based on Marcel Aime, he played the son of the character played by Bourvil. His model was Jean Gabin. French stardom and international fame, 1959 to 1964. Delon and Marie Laforêt during the shooting of Purple Noon in Italy, August 1959. Delon was given the lead in the comedy Women Are Weak, 1959. This was a big hit in France and was the first of Delon's films to be seen in America. Delon made some personal appearances in New York to promote the movie. In a 1959 interview first aired on the French television program Ciné-Panorama, conducted during the filming of Rocco and His Brothers, Alain Delon expressed his admiration for Jean Marais, stating that he idolized the actor. "Everything is happening very quickly for you, you must be caught in a whirlwind, do you manage to find yourself?" He answered, "I try to not let myself be overwhelmed. To remain what I was before, to remain is simple. I took as a model an actor that I love, and that is Jean Marais, who always remained the same." Delon next made 2 films that ensured his international reputation. In 1960, he appeared in René Clément's Plein Soleil, released in the U.S. as Purple Noon, which was based on the Patricia Highsmith novel The Talented Mr. Ripley. Delon played protagonist Tom Ripley to critical acclaim. Highsmith was a fan of his portrayal. The movie was a hit in France and on the art house circuit in English-speaking countries. He then played the title role in Luchino Visconti's Rocco and His Brothers, 1960. Critic Bosley Crowther of the New York Times wrote that Delon's work was touchingly pliant and expressive. Delon made his stage debut in 1961 in the John Ford play 'Tis Pity She's a Whore alongside Romy Schneider in Paris. Visconti directed the production, which broke box office records that he was reunited with René Clément in the Italian comedy film about fascism, The Joy of Living, 1961. It was a minor success. More popular was an all-star anthology film Famous Love Affairs, 1961. Delon's segment cast him as Albert III, Duke of Bavaria, opposite Brigitte Bardot. Around this time, Delon was mentioned as a possibility for the lead in Lawrence of Arabia. Peter O'Toole was cast instead, but then Delon was signed by Seven Arts to a 4-picture deal, including a big-budget international movie of the Marco Polo story and The King of Paris, about Alexandre Dumas. Neither project came to fruition. Instead, he was cast by Michelangelo Antonioni opposite Monica Vitti in L'Eclisse, 1962, a major critical success, although audiences were small. More popular was another all-star anthology film, The Devil and the Ten Commandments, 1963. Delon's segment cast him with Danielle Darieuse. Delon in Rocco and His Brothers, 1960. Producer Jacques Barr was making a heist film starring Jean Gabin with backing from MGM, titled Any Number Can Win, 1963. Gabin's co-star was going to be Jean-Louis Trintignant until Delon lobbied Barr for the role. He took the film's distribution rights in certain countries instead of a straight salary. Because such an arrangement had never previously been made in France, it became known as Delon's method. Delon's gamble paid off handsomely, with Jean Gabin later claiming that Delon earned 10 times more money than he did as a result. However, in 1965, Delon claimed no one else has tried it since and made money. The experience gave Delon a taste for producing. He signed a 5-picture deal with MGM, of which Any Number Can Win was the first. His reputation was further enhanced when he worked with Visconti again in Il Gattopardo, The Leopard, with Burt Lancaster and Claudia Cardinali. It was the 7th biggest hit of the year in France. Any Number Can Win was the 6th. The Leopard was widely screened in the U.S. through 20th Century Fox. Delon was now one of the most popular stars in France. He starred in A Swashbuckler, The Black Tulip, 1964, another hit. Les Felons, 1964, which reunited him with Clement and co-starred Jane Fonda, was filmed in French and English versions. The latter was distributed by MGM, but it was not a success. In 1964, the Cinémathèque Française held a showcase of Delon's films and Delon started a production company, Delbo Production, with Georges Baume. They produced a film called The Unvanquished, L'Insoumise, in 1964, in which Delon played a terrorist OAS assassin. It had to be re-edited because of legal issues. Despite being distributed by MGM, audiences were small. After finishing the film, Delon left French cinema to pursue a career in Hollywood. Hollywood star, 1964 to 1966. Typecast as a Latin lover, Delon spent the next few years focused on Hollywood. In 1965, he said that he wanted to make a picture in America and one in Europe each year. He also said that his accent prevented him from playing certain roles. Because of my accent, I would not attempt to play Americans. I am working on removing the distinctly French inflections from my speech so that I can play all continental nationalities. He made his debut in the British film industry starring in an all-star anthology for MGM titled The Yellow Rolls-Royce, 1965, opposite Shirley MacLaine. It was popular, although Delon had little to do. He made his Hollywood debut as the lead role in the film Once a Thief, where he co-starred with Anne Margaret. It was based on a novel by Ezekiel Marco, who had written Any Number Can Win, but it was not as successful. It was financed by MGM, which announced Delon would appear in a western to be titled Ready for the Tiger and directed by Sam Peckinpah, but the film was never made. Instead, Delon signed a 3-picture deal with Columbia, for whom he appeared in the big-budget action film Lost Command, 1966, playing a member of the French Foreign Legion, alongside Anthony Quinn and Claudia Cardinali. The studio announced that he would appear in the biopic Cervantes, but this was never made. Universal Studios used Delon in a western, Texas Across the River, opposite Dean Martin. Ray Stark wanted to use him in The Night of the Iguana, and this property is condemned. He did not appear in either film, but acted in that Producers Is Paris Burning, directed by René Clement, playing Jacques Chaban-Delmas. This was a massive hit in France, but performed disappointingly at the U.S. box office, as did all of Delon's Hollywood finance films. 46. Delon remained a massive star in France, along with Steve McQueen and Sean Connery, and was one of the biggest foreign stars in Japan. However, he could not make headway in the U.S. market. Return to France, 1967 to 1969. After one British movie and 4 Hollywood movies, Delon returned to France to make The Last Adventure opposite Lino Ventura. It was one of Delon's most popular films of the 1960s, but was not popular in North America. He was meant to work again with Visconti in The Stranger, but this did not happen. Instead, he appeared on the Paris stage in Les Yeux Creves and starred in the neo-noir crime thriller Le Samurai, The Samurai, with Jean-Pierre Melville, which became another film classic that he played an amnesiac in Diabolically Yours, 1968, for Julien Duvivier. He had a role in another all-star anthology, Spirits of the Dead, 1968. His segment was directed by Louis Malle and co-starred Brigitte Bardot. Delon had another attempt at English-language cinema with The Girl on a Motorcycle, 1968, with Marianne Faithfull, for director Jack Cardiff. It was a surprise hit in Britain. The Girl on a Motorcycle, which was released in United States as Naked Under Leather, would be the first film to receive an X rating in the United States. Far more popular at the French box office was Farewell Friend, Adieu l'ami, in which Delon and Charles Bronson played former foreign legionnaires who get involved in a heist. The film helped turn Charles Bronson into a genuine star in Europe. The film La Piscine reunited the 1960s mythical couple, Alain Delon and Romy Schneider. This was thought to be one of the reasons for its success. Schneider had dramatically broken up with Delon a couple years earlier and married German director and actor Harry Mayen in Berlin. She had a child. Delon asked the filmmaker to book her for this role. He continuously pursued her, both before and after filming La Piscine, with persistent attempts to reconcile. Despite Romy Schneider's refusals, their shared history and emotional connections spilled onto the screen, infusing the film with raw authenticity. Delon in the Sicilian Clan, 1969. While making the 1969 thriller La Piscine, The Swimming Pool, with Romy Schneider, the body of Delon's friend and bodyguard Stephen Markovich, apparently murdered, was found in a rubbish dump near Paris. The police investigation revealed claims of sex parties involving celebrities such as Delon and members of the French government, including future President Georges Pompidou, whose wife Claude was allegedly the subject of a series of compromising photos at one such party. Corsican crime boss François Marcantoni, a friend of Delon, was suspected of involvement in the murder. The affair gained notoriety throughout France and in the French press as the Markovich affair. In a 1969 BBC interview, Delon was questioned about his alleged involvement in the death of Markovich, rumors of his involvement in the sex parties, and Delon's own sexual preferences. Reporter: people, once more, don't say it straight to your face, but they suggest very, very strongly that you have homosexual tastes? Delon: so what's wrong if I had? Or I did? Would I be guilty of something? If I like it, I'll do it. We have a great actor in France named Michel Simon, and Michel Simon said once, if you like your goat, make love with your goat. But the only matter is to love. Delon then starred in a series of gangster films. The first was Jeff, 1969, made by his own production company, Adele. In The Sicilian Clan, 1969, Delon collaborated with Lino Ventura and Jean Gabin, and the film was a blockbuster. Even more popular in Europe was Borsellino, 1970, which Delon produced and in which he co-starred opposite Jean-Paul Belmondo. Neither of these films was successful in the US, as Delon had hoped. Neither was The Red Circle, despite Delon co-starring in it with Yves Montand. For a change of pace, he produced a romantic drama, The Lovemates, 1971, which was not successful. Neither was the 1971 comedy Easy, Down There. Established actor and more international films. 1970s. Delon giving out autographs, 1971. Delon signing autographs in 1971. In the early 1970s, Delon made another attempt at the English-speaking market. The Assassination of Trotsky, 1972, for Joseph Losey was poorly received, but Red Sun, 1972, with Charles Bronson and Toshiro Mifune, did well. In France, he appeared opposite Simone Signoret in The Widow Kudirk, 1971. He starred in his third film with Melville, On Flick in 1972, as well. He then produced and starred in a romantic drama, Indian Summer, 1972, and subsequently appeared in the thrillers Traitement de Choc, 1973, and Tony Arzenta, 1973. In 1973, he recorded a duet with Dalida, Paroles, Paroles, that went on to become one of the most recognizable French songs. He tried again for Hollywood stardom with Scorpio, 1973, with Burt Lancaster for director Michael Winner. It was only a minor hit. In France, he made The Burned Barns, 1973, and Creasy, 1974. He produced Two Men in Town, 1974, which reteamed him with Gene Gabin, and Borsellino and Company, 1974, a sequel to his earlier hit. After another gangster thriller, Icy Breasts, 1974, Delon returned to his first swashbuckler since The Black Tulip, playing the title character in the 1975 Italian-French film Zorro. He made some more crime films, The Gypsy, 1975, Flick Story, 1975, with Jean-Louis Trintignant, Boomerang, 1976, and Armageddon, 1976. In 1976, Delon starred in Monsieur Klein, for which he was nominated for the César Award. Delon in 1972. It was back to crime for another series of thrillers in which he starred as well as produced, Man in a Hurry, 1977, Death of a Corrupt Man, 1977, Le Gang, 1977, 64, and Attention, The Kids Are Watching, 1978. In 1979, Delon stated that only a quarter of his business activities involved films, that he also had a helicopter business, built furniture, promoted prize fights, and raced horses, and that he was still interested in becoming a star in America. In 1979, he made a final attempt at Hollywood stardom, signing with agent Sue Mengers and starring in The Concorde. Airport 79, 1979, the film was not a big success. Delon returned to acting in French films, playing in and producing The Medic, 1979, and Three Men to Kill, 1980. Later career. 1980s and 1990s. Tehran 43, 1981, was a change of pace. In this big Soviet production, he co-starred with Claude Jade and Kurt Jürgens in a co-starring role beside Russian actors. Then it was back to crime, For a Cop's Hide, 1981, Le Choc, 1982, opposite Catherine Deneuve, Le Battant, 1983. He was awarded the Best Actor César Award for his role in Bertrand Blier's Notre Histoire, 1984, and portrayed the aristocratic dandy Baron de Charlis in a film adaptation of Marcel Proust's novel Swan in Love in the same year. His thrillers resumed with Parole de Flic, 1986, The Passage, Let Sleeping Cops Lie, 1988, and Dancing Machine, 1990. One notable film during this period was Jean-Luc Godard's Nouvelle Vague in 1990, in which Delon played twins. Delon's last major role was in Patrice Leconte's Un Chant Surdou in 1998, another box office disappointment. Delon announced his decision to give up acting in 1997, although he still occasionally accepted roles. Delon acquired Swiss citizenship in 1999, and the company managing products sold under his name is based in Geneva. He resided in Chain Boucheries in the canton of Geneva. 2000s and 2010s. In 2001, Delon starred in the French television drama Fabio Montale. He played an aging policeman dressed in stylish clothes, a signature Delon role for audiences. The show was a big hit. In 2003, Delon tried to recreate the success of Fabio Montale and produced and starred in another French television police drama, Frank Riva. It did well, but less so than Fabio Montale. Alain Delon at the 2007 Cannes Film Festival. Delon with his daughter Anushka at the 2010 Cannes Film Festival. He starred in 2008 as Julius Caesar in the box office hit Asterix aux Jeux Olympiques, which co-starred Gérard Depardieu. Around this time, he mostly took roles in TV movies and also played some roles on the French stage. He directed a TV movie in 2008, co-starring Anouk Aimée, titled Love Letters, based on a play by A.R. Gurney. In 2018, after a 7-year hiatus from cinema, Delon had planned to star in a new movie, titled La Maison Vide, co-starring Juliette Binoche and directed by Patrice Leconte. However, in November 2018, the French media announced that the project had been cancelled. No specific reason was given for the cancellation. Among his last roles were in the 2011 television movie Un Journée Ordinaire and in the 2012 Russian production S Novim Godom, Mimi, in which he starred as himself. He again appeared as himself in the 2019 movie Tout Ressemblance as a guest on a talkshow. In April 2019, at 83, Delon released a new single. The track, titled JNMK Toy, was composed by Rick Allison and Julia Paris. Already in 1973, Delon had scored a huge international hit duetting with Egyptian-French singer Dalida on the song Paroles. In 1983, he collaborated with Shirley Bassey on the international hit song Thought I'd Ring You. Delon at the 2019 Cannes Film Festival. At the 2019 Cannes Film Festival, Delon received an honorary Palme d'Or for his long-standing career in movies. A retrospective of some of his films was shown at the festival. However, there was much controversy surrounding Delon receiving this award due to remarks he had allegedly made about the treatment of women during his career and in his private life. Thierry Frémaux, the artistic director of the festival, addressed the controversy during a homage at the ceremony, stating, "We know that intolerance is back. We're being asked to believe that if we all think the same, it will protect us from the risk of being disliked or being wrong. But Alain Delon is not afraid of being wrong, being disliked, and he doesn't think like others, and he's not afraid of being alone." Delon responded emotionally, saying, "For me, it's more than the end of a career. It's the end of a life. It feels as though I'm receiving a posthumous tribute while being alive." He received the award from his daughter, Anouchka Delon. 2020s. In a July 2021 interview on TV5 Monde, his first since having 2 strokes, Delon said that he planned to act in one more film. Also on TV5 Monde, Delon interviewed Ukrainian President Zelensky in September 2022 as part of a special program on the war in Ukraine, Face à Zelensky. Delon expressed his support for the Ukrainian people during the interview. Business career. In the 1970s, Delon expanded his commercial interests, buying harness racing trotters and promoting boxing matches. He has also helped develop and promote a variety of products sold under his name, including wristwatches, clothing, eyewear, perfume, stationery, and cigarettes. Delon's brand of sunglasses became particularly popular in Hong Kong after actor Chow Yun-fat wore them in the 1986 crime film A Better Tomorrow, as well as 2 sequels. Delon reportedly wrote a letter thanking Chow for helping to promote and sell the sunglasses in Hong Kong and China. The film's director John Woo has acknowledged Delon as one of his idols and wrote a short essay on Le Samouraï as well as Le Cercle Rouge for the Criterion Collection DVD releases, 87, in 2009 and 2015. Christian Dior used images of the young Alain Delon and excerpts of his 1960s films The Swimming Pool and The Last Adventure, respectively, in the Eau Savage cologne advertising campaigns. Political opinions. Delon described himself as a Gaullist, explaining he has been raised in the spirit of General de Gaulle. When de Gaulle resigned from the French presidency after he lost a nationwide referendum in 1969, Delon told him in a letter, "Since always, and even more in these years thanks to you, I was proud to be French, then writing about the result I feel with fright a sense of shame that break my heart." Delon has later supported centre-right candidate Valéry Giscard d'Estaing in his successful 1974 presidential campaign, and again in his failed attempt to be re-elected in 1981. He gave his support to Raymond Barre in 1988 and to Nicolas Sarkozy in 2007. He endorsed Gaullist candidate François Fillon, who came third in the 2017 presidential election, but said he did not vote in the second runoff between Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen. He later endorsed Valérie Pécresse in 2022, calling her the only woman he wants to be president. During an interview in 2013, Delon expressed sympathy for the French far-right political party National Front's electoral successes, saying, "The National Front, like the MCG, Geneva Citizens Movement, in Geneva, is very important. I encourage it and I perfectly understand it." However, in another interview in 2018, he denied having ever voted for Marine Le Pen. Delon was good friends with Argentine world champion boxer Carlos Monzon, even visiting Monzon during his stint in prison. In 2022, the 86-year-old Delon was invited by Volodymyr Zelensky to travel to Ukraine. Hiromi Rollin case. On July 5, 2023, his 3 children filed a complaint against the woman presented as the actor's companion, alleging psychological harassment, interception of correspondence, animal cruelty, intentional violence, unlawful confinement, and abuse of weakness. According to Anthony Delon, his father requested in writing that Mrs. Rowland leave the residence in Douchy-Montcorbin. A preliminary investigation was opened on July 6. On July 7, Yassine Bouzrou, lawyer for Hiromi Rowland, stated that she disputes the entirety of the facts. Furthermore, the lawyer added that she would file a complaint against members of the Delon family and bodyguards for aggravated voluntary violence suffered on July 5, 2023. Meanwhile, Hiromi Rowland wrote a letter to the prosecutor of Montargis in which she denies being Alain Delon's companion, claiming to have had an intimate relationship with him for over 20 years, although she stated in another interview a love relationship of 33 years. The prosecutor of Montargis dismissed the 2 complaints filed by the 3 Delon children against the woman in her 60s due to insufficiently characterized offenses. Hiromi Rowland's complaint, filed in response against the Delon children, was also dismissed for the same reasons. However, Hiromi Rowland's lawyer announced that his client planned to file a complaint with a civil party in order to restart the investigations. Anthony Delon, on his part, intended to become a civil party against Hiromi Rowland so that the truth is revealed. Alain Delon case. On January 4, 2024, Alain Delon filed a complaint against his son Anthony following an interview granted by the latter to Paris Match magazine. Anthony Delon discussed his father's fragile health and accused his half-sister Anushka of manipulating their father regarding the inheritance. In this interview, the eldest revealed that his father is weakened and that he can't bear to see himself like this, diminished anymore. Subsequently, Anthony Delon filed a police report against Anushka, accusing her of not informing the family about the negative results of 5 cognitive tests conducted by their father between 2019 and 2022, after he suffered a severe stroke in 2019. Anushka Delon, on the other hand, accused her brothers of endangering the patriarch's life and claimed to have wanted to take their father to Switzerland so he could continue to be treated there. She then announced plans to sue for defamation, false accusations, threats, and harassment against Anthony Delon. Furthermore, Alain Delon's lawyer asserted that his client cannot bear the aggressiveness of his son Anthony, who keeps telling him that he is senile. On March 29, 2024, Anushka Delon sued her brothers for invasion of privacy after the broadcast of a recording in January 2024 on Instagram of a conversation between her and her father Anthony and Alain. Fabien will thus be judged for use, retention, or disclosure of a document or recording obtained by an invasion of another's privacy. The trial date is set for April 2025. Physically weakened by cancer, Delon was placed under reinforced guardianship by judicial decision in April 2024, following a hearing at the Montargis court, in the presence of the actor's 3 children. This measure follows a period during which Delon had already been placed under guardianship since January 25, and notably granted the curator appointed by the judge the power to manage his expenses. Markovich affair. Main article: Markovich affair. On October 1, 1968, the body of Stephen Markovich, Delon's former bodyguard, was found in a public dump in Elincourt, Yvelines, a village on the western outskirts of Paris. Delon and François Marcantoni, a Corsican gangster, came under investigation, partly because of a letter from Markovich to his brother Alexander, in which he had written, "If I get killed, it's 100% the fault of Alain Delon and his godfather François Marcantoni." Following some articles in the press and testimony by Borivo Jakov, the investigation involved the former Prime Minister and future President of France, Georges Pompidou, who testified that he and his wife had been present at certain parties with Markovich and Delon. Markovich's death sparked rumors that there were photos of group sex that included Pompidou's wife. Pompidou accused Louis Wallin and Henri Capitant of using the French espionage service STIS to try to frame him. After he became president of France, he named Alexandre de Morenches as the head of the STIS in order to reform it. De Morenches, assisted by his principal private secretary, Michel Roussan, expelled a secret agent who had been involved in the investigation of Jean-Charles Marchionni. Other legal troubles. In 1969, Delon was convicted in absentia and sentenced to 4 months in jail by an Italian court for assaulting an Italian photographer. On February 26, 2024, police raided Delon's home where they seized 72 firearms and 3,000 rounds of ammunition. A court-appointed official had been sent to the home of Delon, who was not authorized to own a firearm, and alerted a judge after noticing a weapon in the residence. Health and death. Delon in 2019. Delon suffered a stroke in June 2019. He was admitted to hospital after experiencing dizziness and headaches. In August 2019, he was recovering in a Swiss hospital. In September 2022, he began experimental treatment for a slow-progressing lymphoma. In the summer of 2023, Delon's 3 children made the decision to stop this treatment because it was weakening him. In a 2021 interview with Paris Match, Delon expressed support for euthanasia, calling it the most logical and natural thing. In 2022, Delon's son Anthony revealed in his autobiography Entre Chien et Loup that, following the death of his mother Natalie, Alain said he wanted to be removed from life support if he were to succumb to a coma, and had asked Anthony to fulfill his request if such a circumstance arose. Shortly thereafter, some news organizations reported that Delon was planning to imminently end his life through euthanasia, but the reports were adamantly denied by his son, Alain Fabien, who said that quotes from Anthony Delon's book had been taken out of context. In January 2024, Delon was reported to be in poor health and living a reclusive lifestyle at his La Brûlerie estate in Douchy. At the same time, a public feud concerning Delon's health arose between 3 of his children, Anthony, Anuchka and Alain Fabien, all of whom acknowledged Delon was ailing but lucid and aware of the feud. The rift began when Anthony publicly accused Anuchka, his half-sister, of lying and manipulation for concealing the results of cognitive tests Swiss doctors had performed on their father. The children, however, had united in mid-2023 to successfully evict Delon's former companion Hiromi Roland, whom they accused of abusing their father. Delon died peacefully on August 18, 2024 at his home in Douchy, surrounded by family members. He was 88. Influences. Delon's favorite actor was John Garfield. He also admired Jean Marais, Montgomery Clift, Marlon Brando and Robert Walker. Influence on his contemporaries and legacy. Recognition by one's peers. Many filmmakers, including Ramin Bahrani, Daniel Bruhl, Jackie Chan, Sofia Coppola, William Friedkin, Jack Huston, Kazuo Ishiguro, Miko Kaji, Eva Longoria, Kyle MacLachlan, Charles Melton, Nicholas Winding Refn, Mickey Rourke, Mark Strong, Quentin Tarantino, Johnny To, Bruce Willis, John Woo, Harvey Weinstein, expressed respect or admiration for Alain Delon's career and longevity. Alain Delon and Bruce Willis with their respective daughters Anuchka and Scout Leroux Le Bal de Débutantes, Paris, 2008. Georges Crevend, Sigourney Weaver, Alain Delon. Leonardo DiCaprio regards Alain Delon as one of the coolest actors in the history of cinema. The Canadian actor Keanu Reeves asserts that Delon is his role model as an actor. He's such a charismatic actor. I think he has something in him between tension and melancholy. British director Matthew Vaughn compares actor Michael Caine to Alain Delon, suggesting the unique cinematic influence of these two actors in their respective countries. British actor Clive Owen says he is fascinated by Alain Delon's natural grace, considering Le Samouraï and La Piscine among his favorite films. Joseph Losey, an American director, expressed his admiration for Alain Delon, saying, "Alain is one of those rare talents who can be honored as being difficult. To me, this word means professionalism, demand, dedication to work, warmth, and love. He's not a man to play with, but a man you can rely on." American producer Robert Evans paid tribute to Delon in his memoirs The Kid Stays in the Picture, Hyperion Books, 1994, considering him as his brother in life as in cinema and the most beautiful actor in Europe. Also, La Cinéthèque 192 and the Criterion Collection have unveiled several lists where various professionals in the field recommend and or specify their favorite films. Several of the productions in which Delon plays the leading role are cited. For example, Yorgos Lanthimos, Aaron Katz, Monty Hellman, Gott Spielman, Andrew Legoldum, Edgar Wright, Raul Castillo, Nadav Lapid, Lynn Ramsey, Jerry Schatzberg recommended and or loved The Samurai, while Plein Soleil seduced Akira Kurosawa. The latter also cites Any Number Can Win, and Bertrand Blier Rocco and his brothers featured on the lists drawn up by Martin Scorsese, Michel Hazanavicius, Christine Mungiu, and Aki Kaurismäki among others. Chan-wook Park and Bertrand Bonello choose Flick, Christoph Hochhäusler, Kiyoshi Kurosawa, and Park Chan-wook preferred Mr. Klein. Finally, The Eclipse won over Raymond Depardon, François Ozon, and James Franco. Jean-Michel Frodon, a film critic and historian, points out that in post-war French cinema, Delon is a unique figure, whose energy and intelligence on screen were superbly exploited by filmmakers such as Jean-Pierre Melville. In addition, Alain Delon is one of the most famous French actors abroad, alongside Gérard Depardieu, Jean Reno, Catherine Deneuve, and Audrey Tautou. Cinematic influence. This section contains a list of miscellaneous information. Please relocate any relevant information into other sections or articles. August 2024. Alain Delon's interpretations have influenced many colleagues, both in France and internationally, especially thanks to his role in The Samurai, often cited as one of the most influential films in history. Director Melville wrote the film for Alain Delon and describes the genesis of this film. Suddenly, Delon looked at his watch and stopped me. "You've been reading the script for 7.5 minutes, and there hasn't been a word of dialogue. That's good enough for me. I'll do the film." "What's the title?" "Le Samurai," I told him. And he then led me to his bedroom. All it contained was a leather couch and a samurai lance, his sword and dagger. Director Bertrand Blier speculates that the meeting between Alain Delon and the filmmaker Jean-Pierre Melville, historic, charged with a mutual fascination, was at the origin of the success of this classic. The Samurai was a completely bizarre film. There has only been one film made like this in France. And it's so much like Delon, this film, a mute, completely narcissistic role where practically nothing happens. Delon sits in front of a mirror for an hour correcting the position of his hat. It had a lot of charm. It was a fascinating film. It was an extraordinary analysis of these two men, a formidable joint portrait of Melville/Delon. Delon and Melville crystallize a film cited as one of the most influential in history, which will become an essential reference for many filmmakers. Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, Jim Jarmusch, Michael Mann, John Woo, Johnny To, David Fincher, Bernardo Bertolucci, Aki Kaurismäki, Takashi Kitano, Georges Lautner, Nicolas Winding Refn, Luc Besson, and Joel Coen and Ethan Coen have all taken the motifs from this feature film, while adapting it to their respective directing styles. Thus, many new Hollywood films and critical successes such as William Friedkin's The French Connection, 1971, and Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation, 1974, contain explicit references to the samurai and the character of Jeff Costello played by Delon. The Samurai. The German film Liebe ist kalter als der Tod pays homage to French cinema masters like Claude Chabrol and Eric Rohmer. Furthermore, the directorial style of Alain Delon, as well as the artwork of the poster, draws inspiration from Alain Delon's magnetic presence in Le Samurai. The influence of French cinema vis-a-vis Italian cinema is notable, particularly in the neo-thriller or poliziotesco genre. This film genre, which mixes elements of French thrillers and American film noir, has found in Delon a representative figure of the cold and methodical hitman, especially thanks to his role in Jean-Pierre Melville's Le Samurai. The character of Jeff Costello, played by Delon, largely inspired Fernando Di Leo and his middle trilogy. In Milan Caliber 9, the first part of Di Leo's middle trilogy, the main character, Ugo Piazza, played by Gaston Mosgin, is a silent and relentless gangster, hunted by both the mafia and the police. His impassive character and restrained intensity evoke Delon's Jeff Costello. This influence is also evident in Il Boss, the final installment of the middle trilogy, where Henry Silva plays a lone killer reminiscent once again of Delon's character in The Samurai. Di Leo, a great admirer of Melville's cinema, was clearly inspired by Melville's aesthetics and themes. The influence of the film Le Samurai is also visible in Luc Besson's Leon, the Professional. Heir to Jeff Costello, the main character of The Samurai played by Delon, Jean Reno plays Leon, a lone hitman with a strict personal code, no women, no children. Although Leon is less refined and warmer than Costello, similarities between the two characters are notable. Like Costello, Leon is a methodical professional, entirely dedicated to his work, but he is also able to show a certain humanity. Leon also lives a minimalist existence similar to Costello's. Martin Scorsese was permanently influenced by Melville's Samurai. Paul Schrader, screenwriter of Taxi Driver, was himself inspired by the French film to draw from it the atmosphere and the dimension of modern alienation. Scorsese, steeped in the tradition of cinema noir, drew on this aesthetic to recreate Jeff Costello, Delon, as Travis Bickle, the disenchanted taxi driver in Taxi Driver played by Robert De Niro. In Kill, Delon's influence is present in the film's multifaceted approach to storytelling and character dynamics. Borsellino, a film released in 1969, tells the adventures of Roch Siffredi and François Capella, two gangsters in Marseille in the 1930s. Played by Alain Delon and Jean-Paul Belmondo, Borsellino marks their only collaboration. This tandem, made up of two of the most popular French actors, inspired Robert Redford and Paul Newman to stage The Sting in 1973. Alain Delon, through his interpretation of Jeff Costello, develops an archetype of the silent and stoic antihero. In The Driver, this model is taken up and adapted to the American context, with Ryan O'Neal playing the role of the anonymous and detached driver, an expert in car escapes. The Driver is also considered an unofficial adaptation of Melville's Samurai. Like Delon, O'Neal plays a character who speaks little, but whose actions and choices reveal an internal depth and complexity. In Rocco and His Brothers, Delon plays the character of Rocco Perandi, a tormented young man, a street wrestler who has become famous and has a tumultuous career in an Italian family in the 40s. The film influenced a number of filmmakers, including Scorsese, who closely studied Visconti's directing, especially the way the fight scenes are filmed, a technique he later integrated into his Raging Bull. In addition, Scorsese was inspired for the same film by the character of Rocco, Delon, to help shape Robert De Niro's interpretation of Jake LaMotta. Chow Yun-fat, in John Woo's film The Killer, not only takes on the role of Alain Delon in Le Samurai but also portrays a character who dreams he is Alain Delon. Tony Leung, in his role as the undercover inspector in Hard Boiled, depicts traits similar to those shown by Delon in The Samurai. The character mentioned is named after Alain Delon. His name is Alan. Alan is a cold and contemplative police officer, caught between his conflicting loyalties and condemned to a life of solitude. Like Costello, Alain Delon in The Samurai, he finds refuge in an isolated existence, living on his boat, far from the tumult of the criminal life to which he is inextricably linked. The idea for the costumes for Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction came from a discussion between Tarantino and costume designer Betsy Hyman about French film noir with Alain Delon. She says, "We went to a Denny's and talked about the film visually, and then we went to his house and he showed me a lot of French film noir, a lot of Alain Delon. I said, well, all these guys are in suits. And we're talking about guys who just got out of jail and want to remain anonymous. What can they do? They could go to a thrift store, buy a black suit, a white shirt, and a tie, and they could afford it." Quentin really liked the idea. In the film Heat, directed by Michael Mann, the character of Neil McCauley, played by Robert De Niro, embodies a quiet and reserved anti-hero, inspired by the minimalist and detached style associated with Delon. Macaulay's character, with his rigorous discipline and unflappable attitude, is reminiscent of Jeff Costello in The Samurai. Like Delon, De Niro navigates between different emotional states while maintaining a feline and mineral presence on screen. In his production, Mann was inspired by Jean-Pierre Melville, The Samurai, The Red Circle, and deals with the theme of loneliness and isolation in male characters. John Frankenheimer's film Ronin, released in 1998, evokes an atmosphere that is strongly reminiscent of the classics and thrillers of French cinema, notably through the influence of Alain Delon and his role in Jean-Pierre Melville's Le Samurai. In this film, Delon plays a lonely hitman, wrapped in a grey coat and evolving in a dark and rainy Paris. This aesthetic and character resonates strongly in Ronin, where Robert De Niro, dressed in a similar trench coat, inevitably recalls Delon. In addition, Sam is portrayed as a cold and methodical professional, just like the role played by Delon in 1967. Also, the wet streets, the grey skies and the scenes in Parisian cafes are reminiscent of the works of Melville and the performances of his favorite actor Alain Delon in The Red Circle and A Cop, 257. Forrest Whitaker was inspired by the role of Jeff Costello, played by Alain Delon in The Samurai, for Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai by Jim Jarmusch. As a preparation, I watched this masterpiece with Alain Delon. Thanks to him, I understood the virtue of silence. Sometimes you make your voice heard better by not saying anything at all. I don't know if I'm a samurai, if I'd be able to die too rather than betray my convictions, but this role helped me to focus, to calm down. Like Alain Delon's killer in The Samurai, the film's most obvious influence, the man named Ghost Dog, Forrest Whitaker, works alone, adhering to a strict personal code. The ending also openly gives a nod to The Samurai, in which Alain Delon, like Ghost Dog, carries an unloaded gun in a circumstance that he knows will prove fatal. Johnny, too, in his film Full-Time Killer, borrows heavily from the styles of John Woo, Takashi Miike, Sui Hark. In her works, there are also recurring tributes to the minimalist aesthetic of Melville and other French films. The film refers to Alain Delon's films, and there is a video saleswoman who talks about what she likes to praise as a genre of films. I put them in the film to show that it's something we seem to know or have seen, but it's not real. It seeks to immerse viewers in a recognizable universe, a world where cultural references serve as bridges to an intuitive but deliberately unrealistic understanding. To prepare for the role of Vincent in Collateral, Tom Cruise first watched a few movies about professional killers, including Jean-Pierre Melville's The Samurai starring Alain Delon. I was very fascinated by his solitary and melancholic charisma in carrying out his cruel affairs. Cruise's appearance and character in the American film are reminiscent of Jeff Costello's character in The Samurai. In The Samurai, Delon plays Jeff Costello, a methodical and solitary hitman whose life is governed by a strict code and a relentless routine within the limits of control. Jim Jarmusch pays homage to this iconography by creating the character of the Lone Man, played by Isaac Debancoele. In many ways, the Lone Man is a modern reincarnation of Jeff Costello. He is also a man of few words, carrying out his missions with clinical precision while maintaining an emotional detachment. The Lone Man, like Costello, is often shown in impeccable costume, traversing urban and rural landscapes with an eerie serenity. Jarmusch, creating an atmosphere of suspense and contemplation, is more generally inspired by the work of Melville. In the comedy You Shoot, I Shoot by Peng Ho Chung, Eric Koch portrays a hitman who idolizes Jeff Costello, dressing like the character and speaking to Costello through a poster of the French film in his apartment. Kim Ji-woon, director of A Bittersweet Life, asked lead actor Lee Byung-hun to take inspiration from Delon's performances in Jean-Pierre Melville's films. I told him to play like Alain Delon. There was a lot of talk about Alain Delon during filming, because the character he plays in Jean-Pierre Melville's films is of course very intelligent and impressively composed, but there is also something delicate about him, an unsettling vulnerability. I've always been convinced that Alain Delon played these roles wonderfully, so I talked a lot about him to my lead actor. The hero of A Bittersweet Life, named after Costello, Jeff is indeed a direct descendant of Jeff Costello, who has the same characteristics of the betrayed lone killer. Hong Kong director Johnny Tu is a great admirer of Melville and his films The Red Circle and The Samurai. Tu has also often mentioned his desire to work with Alain Delon and had initially considered giving him the lead role in Vengeance. Vengeance is therefore an obvious tribute to Melville's universe and features a father who has come to Hong Kong to avenge his daughter who is the victim of hitmen. The character of Francis Costello, a name directly borrowed from Jeff Costello's in Le Samurai played by Alain Delon in 1967, was finally played by Johnny Hallyday. In Anton Corbin's The American, George Clooney portrays a solitary, calm, and meticulous hitman, devoid of emotion and reminiscent of the role played by Delon in 1967. In addition, Delon's influence can also be seen in films such as Nicholas Winding Refn's Drive and Edgar Wright's Baby Driver. Both inspired by The Samurai of Melville, they feature the protagonists, played by Ryan Gosling and Ansel Elgort respectively, as taciturn and charismatic flight drivers, reminiscent of the character of Jeff Costello. 285. Ryan Gosling says that he was inspired for his acting by Delon's performances in The Samurai and Purple Noon. In the development of the Equalizer film franchise, director Antoine Fuqua claims that Delon influenced the development of the main character of Robert McCall, a lonely man with strong moral motivations, acting as a vigilante for those who cannot stand up for themselves, played by Denzel Washington. My biggest inspirations were the foreign films of the 70s, really, and of course, all of Alain Delon's films. French films in particular, like The Samurai, 1967, with that kind of slow pace and character development as it unfolds. These are the kinds of films that inspire me. South Korean actor Jung Woo-sung also drew inspiration from Alain Delon's performance in Le Samurai for his first role as a criminal in Cold Eyes. The Kazakh film Yellow Cat, directed by Adilkan Ergenov, reflects a multitude of cinematic influences, including the classicism of Melville's films. Yellow Cat also features a solitary character wandering through the Kazakh plains and sporting Alain Delon's trench coat and fedora from Le Samurai. The character considers himself a talent, that of imitating Alain Delon, imagining himself to be the French actor. Michael Fassbender drew inspiration from Alain Delon's character in Le Samurai for his role in David Fincher's film The Killer. Keanu Reeves, in John Wick, Chapter 4, portrays a formidable hitman but with a certain emotional depth, imitating Alain Delon, whom Reeves idolizes. Chad Stahelski, the director of the franchise, drew inspiration from Delon's interpretations in Melville's films. The John Wick films are all love letters from Keanu, myself, our stunt team, and our creative team to everyone, from Wong Kar-wai to Sammo Hung, to Sergio Leone, Kurosawa, Alain Delon, and Le Samurai, Spielberg, Tarantino. To all those people we loved growing up. Purple Noon. During the filming of American Gigolo, screenwriter and director Paul Schrader had Richard Gere watch the film Purple Noon so that he could be inspired by Delon's composition. The protagonist of the film Bad Education, La Mala Education, played by Gael Garcia Bernal, is inspired by Patricia Highsmith's character Tom Ripley, as portrayed by Renee Clement in Purple Noon, embodied by Alain Delon. Bernal prepared for the film by studying the performances of Sarah Montiel, Carmen Mora or Victoria Abril, but Bernal said the performance he most wanted to emulate was Alain Delon as Tom Ripley in Plein Soleil. In The Skin I Live In, Pedro Almodovar asks Antonio Banderas to draw inspiration from Alain Delon's performance in The Red Circle to become icy, calculating, restrained and economical. In A Perfect Man, Pierre Niney worked on one resembling Alain Delon's character playing in Plein Soleil. Others. Forrest Whitaker, who studied several Delon films at the university, takes on the role of Gino Strablighi, played by Alain Delon in 1973 Two Men in Town, in Two Men in Town. In The Skin I Live In, Pedro Almodovar asks Antonio Banderas to draw inspiration from Alain Delon's performance in Le Cercle Rouge to become icy, calculating, restrained, and economical. Rocco Siffredi chose his stage name in reference to the characters Rock Siffredi, Borsellino and Borsellino & Co., and Rocco Perondi, Rocco and his brothers, both played by Alain Delon. Hong Kong actor T. Lung chose his stage name from a verbal derivation close to the name of his favorite actor Alain Delon. Ilaria Urbanati, renowned stylist with Ryan Reynolds, Rami Malek and Dwayne Johnson among others, cites Alain Delon among his style icons who inspire him. For men, I am inspired by great icons like Paul Newman, James Dean, Alain Delon, Steve McQueen, Brendo, all classics whose outfits are still cool today. International recognition. Delon filming the aborted Marco Polo in Belgrade, 1962. Alain Delon was offered roles in several iconic productions, thus illustrating the international recognition bestowed upon him. For instance, he was invited by Sam Spiegel, the film's producer, to portray Sharif Ali in Lawrence of Arabia. Despite a successful audition, difficulties related to wearing brown contact lenses for the role led the French actor to decline the offer. Robert Evans also considered Alain Delon for the role of Michael Corleone in The Godfather, stating, "That's how he was described in the book." Delon, however, refused the proposal. In 1973, director and screenwriter Alejandro Jodorowsky embarked on the cinematic adaptation of Dune. Jodorowsky assembled a prestigious artistic team, including rock bands Pink Floyd and Magma for the music. Jodorowsky also envisioned an ambitious cast: Salvador Dali, Orson Welles, and Mick Jagger among others. Alain Delon was slated to portray the character of Duncan Idaho. However, anticipating a 14-hour film, the project was abandoned due to significant financial constraints, Dali notably demanding $100,000 per hour. Alain Delon